guys, thanks for tuning into the channel today. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Chase Bays power steering kit for the R32 GTR. My power steering, one of the lines is leaking, which is fairly common with the GTRs. The lines are old. The stock lines are hard to get and hard to route because they are solid lines. They don't have a lot of flex to them, and so it would be a good idea to move over to something a little more modern, something a little more flexible. And so I'm going to try out the Chase Bays kit. It was about $380 US, which is I don't know, it's a bit pricey, but it's not pricey if it's high quality and isn't a huge pain in the butt as far as I'm concerned. So let's take a look at the lines, and let's take a look at what comes with the kit and what was shipped with the kit, and see if we can install it on the GTR today and reason it out. So let's take a look at the kit. Okay, so this is what came with the kit. I unpacked the box. Everything was wrapped really well. You get 2 stickers. Stickers are great, so that was nice. So what this came with is a very nicely made reservoir, which is supposed to move the reservoir up to kind of near the front headlight from where it is on the shock tower. The reservoir is baffled. It's got very nice fittings on it. And moving along, it has 3 lines. Okay, and so comes with a fitting here that I believe would go off of the pump itself, and yeah, the rest of the fittings are kind of housed on the end of the hose to sort of give you an indication of what to do. Yeah, so it's a tidy kit. Now, as far as directions, so there are no directions that came with my kit. If you go onto the Chase Bays website, there isn't an obvious place where there are written directions or like a how-to. However, there are a series of pictures that I think are meant to show where the lines go, which are helpful. So what I did was I screenshot a few of those photos, and I'm basically going to follow the photos and see what happens, because there isn't any written directions. You know, the other thing that is a bit of a suggestion to this company would be to possibly have a list in the box of what you're supposed to get for the GTR conversion. As far as fittings, that would help if you open the box and you notice that when you take an inventory that there's something that's gone or not there or wasn't packed. Then what you would simply do is not take off the lines for your power steering and have your car still operational, and then contact the company and maybe get another fitting or go into a speed shop and buy it. So yeah. So I'm sort of trusting that all of the stuff is there, but we'll see. All right, a correction already. So I went on to the Chase Bays website again, just to double check for directions, and I did actually find some. So they are under the FAQ section, and there is a written portion for the R32 all-wheel drive or GTR Skyline. So I'll be going through that on my smartphone while I'm installing the kit. Yeah, and there's no laundry list on there that I can see as far as what parts are supposed to be included, but that's fine. So let's start on the install itself, likely by disconnecting the old lines. Okay, so taking a look at my car here, where the reservoir is supposed to be moved from is here. Right now it's right now it's in the stock position on the shock tower, and it's going to be relocated somewhere in this area from what I can tell, and it's going to eliminate these lines from the power steering pump. Okay, so the first thing I did with this install is I just mocked up the lines. This is what I recommend you guys do if you're eliminating stock lines, especially ones like the power steering where you may have to cut some of it out. Mock up the soft lines, run them, and just make sure that where the reservoir is makes sense and that the lines reach, and that the fittings also make sense. So looking here, I basically just zip tied the new lines to the spot basically where I wanted the reservoir, and then I ran them past the Hicus pump, and it turns out that, see right under here, that they do actually reach the steering rack, so that's good. Now the picture that Chase Bays shows and the routing that they show, I probably wouldn't do, but again, you know, this is your car. So just as far as power steering lines, you have to make sure that they're routed so that they're not going to bind when the engine torques. You also have to keep them away from any source of friction, any source of heat, so that they don't end up bursting, right? So I'm not going to run them along the frame rail, which is where Chase Bays says to do it, partially because I actually don't think they're long enough to make it that distance on the GTR kit, which is fine. I'm going to run them sort of past the oil pan and then over top of where the existing steering rack is, and to the rack itself. And there's a lot of spots to tie them together, like tie the two lines together so that they don't move around. They're away from things like the axle, the downpipe, so it's not a big issue. But obviously these ready-to-made kits aren't going to be 100% accurate all the time, and that's fine. You just roll with it, as long as there isn't something crazy where one line is 10 inches short to where it's supposed to go, then it's going to work. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing, is routing it sort of past the oil pan, and I'll show you guys sort of a final photo of that and video of that as well. Okay, so I ran into my first hurdle, so the fittings that go into the rack, what's happening is that they are bottoming out at this end prior to the shoulder bottoming out, which I guess is not the end of the world. However, this would be reflective of a kit that's probably supposed to fit multiple racks. So this end, these are a little bit fragile. You don't want to over tighten them because they'll end up leaking. It's almost like a brake line. But the issue is that the shoulder, so here, does not bottom out on the rack prior to this bottoming out. So what I'm tempted to do is fill this space with some sort of a spacer, but that means a little bit of fabrication. So I have some plastic washers that I'm going to sand down and see if I can take up this space, just so that when this end bottoms out, the shoulder also bottoms out. It'll stop the fitting from backing out, because otherwise you're sitting there with threads exposed, and I don't feel 100% confident in leaving it that way. Although my other example with brake lines, that occasionally happens. So I mean, I could load it up with Loctite, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try and fill that space with some sort of a spacer. Okay, so reviewing the lines here. So on the GTR, keep in mind that the pressure line, so the shiny one there, is the bottom port on the rack. The return is the top port on the rack. It's very important. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to bleed. Okay, so as far as the line install, I'm at the point where I'm going to block off one side of the Hicus pump. And so I made just a small block off plate out of 1/8 thick aluminum. And so now on the Hicus pump, I already have a block off plug. That's not included in the kit either. And the explanation in the directions of the kit are that basically if you have a GTR, you should be swapping in a pump from another Skyline platform that does not have the rear wheel steering. So I don't think that's really the way to go about it, but that's just my opinion. I think most people with GTRs would eliminate the Hicus and then use this plug, a very simple plug that costs almost nothing, to block off the back of the pump. And that includes taking the pump apart and removing the vanes so that there's no pressure on that side. So to say that you should be swapping pumps doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. A $20, or in my case, $2 block off plate that I just cut out of aluminum would be probably the solution. So not to criticize this kit too much. I mean, they don't necessarily have to include everything, but that would be the smartest way of going about it for the GTR. So I'm going to put on the block off plate and continue on. All right, guys, so this is the wrap up for the Chase Bays power steering line and reservoir install. So basically it is done, it is in. So with the Greddy piping kit, and again, to reiterate, I don't expect this kit to fit absolutely every configuration. That's not realistic. So with the Greddy piping kit, I had to cut down one of the pipes here just to move the filter this way a bit, and that's so that I could fit the Chase Bays reservoir, which yeah, is right there in the corner. Now I can't move the reservoir this way, and the reason being is that this line is just not flexible enough to get it any closer without having a risk of like possibly kinking it or something like that. So so this line right here, which is the big one that goes to the reservoir, it's the length makes it so that this reservoir cannot move this way further, and that's just the way it is. So I put on the block off plate on the Hicus side of the pump. That was no problem, but again, not included. And so what I'm going to do now is fire this up, fill it with fluid, fire it up, and see if it leaks. Hopefully not. All right, guys, the system's all bled. Everything works. No issues, no leaks, no nothing. So in closing, I'm reviewing the Chase Bays power steering line kit with reservoir. This one does not have the cooler. Yeah, so overall, just a few very minor things with the install. One being, I wasn't super confident with the fittings that go into the rack because, like I said earlier, the end of the fitting bottomed out before the shoulder of the fitting bottomed out on the rack itself. So I made some spacers just to suck up that space, and so I could cinch it up against the spacer and be a bit more confident in that. The other thing was the block off plate for the HICUS on the GTRs. I mean, like for myself, I whipped that up in, I don't know, 10 minutes with some 1/8 plate aluminum and a bandsaw, some drill, right? Drilled some holes, put a little bit of silicone on it, bolted it up, it's done. Could they include that with the kit? Sure, right? That's very, very cheap. It would be a very cheap thing to do. Most GTR guys, I would say, eliminate the HICUS, put in the plug, and then kind of leave it. So the GTR guys would probably, the path of least resistance for them, instead of buying another pump, would be to just use a block off plate, right, for that that second port that's not being used anyway. All in all, this kit is like a 9 out of 10. The quality is very high. You know, some GTR specific directions online would be a little bit better with photos, like specifically of the GTR. But other than that, I would buy this kit again. The quality of the kit is absolutely top notch. The price is fine. You're getting good quality for what you pay for. Very, very small like things that I would critique, but all in all, that's the car hobby. I think it's a bad expectation to say that Chase Bays should you know, make a plug and play kit down to every last detail for each specific model of the Skyline. That's a bit crazy. So all in all, I like this kit, and I would buy it again. All right, guys, thanks for your time today. Make sure that you check me out on Instagram at Wrench Rampage as well. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit that bell so that you get my regular updates. And as always, thank you for taking the time to view my videos, and have a good night.